In a world where online commentary, YouTube analysis, and influencer culture dominate headlines, the gap between celebrity power and digital free speech has never felt wider. And now it just got deeper. Blake Lively, actress, fashion icon, and household name, has just won a controversial legal victory that's sending shockwaves across the creator community. A judge has ruled that she won't have to pay the legal fees of the very YouTubers and content creators she subpoenaed, despite the fact that many of those subpoenas were successfully challenged, and in some cases dismissed entirely. Let that sink in. Creators, people who were not charged with any crime, not sued for defamation, not even directly involved in the original legal matter, were pulled into the crossfire, forced to hire lawyers and defend themselves in court. And now they've been told that even though they won, they're on their own. When it comes to the financial toll, this isn't just a legal story, it's a wake-up call. Whether you're a creator, a viewer, or just someone who believes in fairness and freedom of speech, this ruling affects you. It raises one essential question: what is the real cost of speaking your mind in the digital age? Let's back up. It started quietly enough. A few YouTubers made videos discussing rumored legal disputes involving Blake Lively. Most of the content publicly available, information, commentary, and speculation. No leaks, no invasive tactics, just what content creators do every day. Break down headlines, offer opinions, connect the dots, and share with their audiences. Then came the subpoenas issued by Blake Lively's legal team. They demanded personal information, metadata, internal emails, and more. Creators were stunned. Many didn't even understand what they were being asked for. They weren't parties to the case. They weren't involved behind the scenes. Some had never even mentioned Blake Lively by name. They just touched on related topics in passing, but the message was clear: if you speak on this, you may be called to court. That threat alone chilled some creators into silence. But others, they pushed back. They hired legal representation. They filed motions to quash the subpoenas, and slowly the tide began to turn. Judges ruled in favor of multiple creators. The subpoenas were deemed too broad, irrelevant, or unnecessary. Creators were not compelled to hand over private communications. No financial damages were assessed against them. In fact, their arguments were upheld. Victory, right? Not exactly. Because behind that legal win was a personal and financial loss that many of these creators are still recovering from. Legal fees mounted into the thousands, some even tens of thousands. These weren't corporate media outlets with legal departments. They were independent creators, some making content from their bedrooms, others working part-time to fund their YouTube channels. So they asked the court, can Blake Lively be ordered to cover our legal expenses? We didn't ask to be involved. We didn't do anything wrong. We were targeted, fought back, and won. Shouldn't she, the one who brought us into this, be responsible for the cost? And the answer from the court was a firm no. The judge ruled that Blake Lively's legal team had not acted in bad faith. The subpoenas may have been broad, even unsuccessful, but they were within the bounds of the law. And under those rules, creators would be left to bear their own costs. This ruling has sparked outrage, confusion, and fear across the content creator world. Because if this can happen once, what's to stop it from happening again? It's a scenario many find terrifying. You make a video about a trending topic, you express your opinion, you cite public sources, then one day you get an envelope in the mail, a subpoena. You need to respond or risk contempt. You hire a lawyer, you spend weeks stressing over court filings, you win. But now you're out $8,000, and there's no way to get that money back. For many creators, that could mean the end of their channel, the end of their income, the end of their voice. And for what? No defamation, no crime, no misinformation, just commentary. The implications of this ruling stretch far beyond one celebrity and a handful of YouTubers. It's about the growing imbalance between those who have the resources to wield the law and those who don't. When legal pressure is enough to bankrupt a creator, even if they do everything right, what kind of message does that send? It tells creators, think twice before you speak. It tells viewers, don't expect uncensored content. It tells public figures, you can shut down criticism without ever filing a lawsuit. That's not just chilling, it's dangerous, because public discourse depends on the ability to speak freely, to ask questions, to analyze headlines, to speculate, debate, disagree, and even joke. It's not about tearing people down, it's about holding power accountable. And sometimes that means discussing the very people who try hardest to avoid the spotlight when things get uncomfortable. Now, Blake Lively didn't break the law. Her team operated within the legal framework. That's not in dispute, but the question isn't just about legality, it's about morality, responsibility, balance. Should someone with wealth, power, and fame be able to issue legal threats to everyday creators, forcing them to drain their savings without consequence? Should the law protect speech, but not the people who use it? And most importantly, if the creators lose even when they win, Who's really winning? This is more than a legal update. It's a battle cry for fairness in a digital world where voices are many but resources are few. So buckle up, because in this 3-part series we're diving deep from the courtroom motions to creator reactions, legal breakdowns, emotional tolls, and the future of creator rights. This story is far from over. Blake Lively may have won in court, but the internet is still deciding who really lost, in a surprising legal twist that has taken both fans and critics by storm. Blake Lively has scored yet another courtroom win. The judge's latest ruling has now tilted the balance in her favor, this time against the very content creators who were hoping to recover their legal fees. After being dragged into a controversial subpoena battle, the court has ruled that those creators will not be reimbursed for the thousands in legal costs they incurred responding to Lively's subpoenas. It's a decision that's sparking a mix of reactions across Hollywood's social media and legal circles. But let's rewind a bit. This whole legal saga didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's been brewing for months, slowly unfolding into what many now call a celebrity legal standoff with unexpected consequences. At the center of it all is Blake Lively, celebrated actress, public figure, and more recently the face of a complex legal drama involving subpoenas, YouTube commentary, and now questions about who bears the financial burden of litigation. The situation initially escalated when Lively and her legal team issued multiple subpoenas to YouTubers and independent creators. These subpoenas, reportedly connected to online commentary involving a rumored legal dispute or sensitive personal matters, ignited instant backlash. Many felt that the subpoenas were overly broad, targeting creators with minimal involvement and aiming to extract information they didn't possess. Others saw it as an overreach, one that set a concerning precedent for how far public figures could go in trying to control narratives online. Soon, several content creators decided to challenge the subpoenas. Some fought back legally. Others took to their platforms to explain what they felt was an unfair use of power. Their argument was rooted in both principle and practicality. Not only were these subpoenas invasive, but responding to them also required hiring legal counsel, costing some thousands of dollars. And that's where the latest ruling comes in. The content creators, feeling they had been unjustly entangled in a case that wasn't theirs to begin with, filed to have their legal fees reimbursed. They believed the burden should not fall on them, especially when the court later found that the subpoenas either lacked merit or were overly broad. However, the judge in the case saw things differently. In the most recent decision, the court ruled that Blake Lively would not be responsible for covering those legal expenses. The creators, despite successfully pushing back, are now left to shoulder their own financial losses. This has sparked a heated debate. On one hand, some legal experts argue that the court followed established legal standards. According to them, unless subpoenas are deemed clearly abusive or in bad faith, it's difficult to shift the cost burden to the issuing party. On the other hand, creators and digital rights advocates say this sets a worrisome tone. If creators can be pulled into expensive legal processes and walk away victorious, but still financially strained, what does that mean for freedom of speech online? What does it say about the power imbalance between celebrities with extensive legal teams and small creators with limited resources? Social media is divided. Some supporters of Lively point to the fact that she's protecting her name, her privacy, and her reputation in a time when misinformation can spread like wildfire. They argue she has every right to use legal tools to find out the truth and defend herself. But others are asking deeper questions. Was the original intent really about uncovering the truth, or was it about silencing critics? Interestingly, the court ruling didn't outright defend the subpoenas themselves. It simply ruled that legal fees would not be reimbursed. That technicality leaves a lot of gray area for both sides to interpret. The creators may have won part of the battle, dodging invasive demands for personal data or communications, but they still lost financially. And for many of them, that's a chilling message. As this decision circulates through media outlets, legal blogs, and YouTube channels, more people are beginning to weigh in. Some creators are posting reaction videos detailing the toll the case has taken on their finances and mental health. Others are expressing disappointment but vowing to continue speaking up, even if it means doing so with tighter legal safeguards in place. For Blake Lively, this is another legal win to add to her record, but at what cost to her public image? While some believe she's simply exercising her rights, others feel her actions reflect a larger cultural clash between traditional Hollywood power and the new age of decentralized media commentary. The court may have spoken, but the conversation is far from over. This ruling could also influence future cases involving celebrity lawsuits and internet commentary. Will creators now think twice before discussing trending topics involving celebrities, knowing they might face subpoenas without financial protection? Or will this prompt broader reform to ensure content creators aren't left footing the bill? For participating in public discourse, what's clear is this: the landscape of legal rights, internet freedom, and celebrity accountability is shifting rapidly. With each ruling, a new precedent is set. And in this particular case, Blake Lively may have won in court. But the ripple effects of this victory are just beginning to spread. As the dust settles from the judge's decision, the impact is beginning to hit the very people who had hoped the justice system would offer some form of relief. Independent content creators, many of whom never imagined they'd find themselves in the middle of a celebrity legal dispute. For them, this wasn't just about legal theory or procedural fairness. It was about real-world consequences, paying thousands of dollars out of pocket for lawyers filing motions, and protecting their digital rights. Several creators involved in the case have now publicly shared their disappointment, while they feel vindicated that they ultimately didn't have to comply with what they saw as invasive or unjustified subpoenas. They're now left with legal bills that range from moderate to staggering. And that financial burden is something they believe shouldn't fall on people who were, by most accounts, simply doing what YouTubers do, commenting on trending news and public behavior. One creator described the experience as emotionally exhausting and financially draining. Another likened it to being punished simply for having an opinion. Many emphasized that they weren't breaking any laws, spreading harmful rumors, or publishing private information. They were participating in public conversations. Yet the legal system, while offering protection from overreaching subpoenas, provided no shield against the cost of defending oneself. That's what's sparking larger questions about access to justice. Is it really justice if only the wealthy can afford to fight legal battles? If creators must think twice before commenting on high-profile stories, fearing financial ruin. If they're caught in the legal crossfire, isn't that effectively a form of silencing, even if it's not technically censorship? In response to the court's decision, some legal experts have come forward to offer perspective. They argue that under current U.S. legal standards, it's incredibly rare for judges to order the reimbursement of legal fees unless there's a finding of abusive process or clear bad faith. In this case, while the subpoenas may have been deemed too broad or ultimately dismissed, they weren't legally defined as abusive. That distinction is what ultimately blocked creators from recovering their fees. Yet others point out that this very distinction exposes a major flaw in how the legal system deals with power imbalance. While a celebrity can issue subpoenas through an attorney backed by funding, influence, and a full team, a single creator has no choice but to spend out of pocket to defend their rights, even if they're in the right. There is no reimbursement simply for winning. There is no prize for being correct, only survival. This case is already being cited as a potential turning point in the growing conversation about slap lawsuits, strategic lawsuits against public participation. While this particular situation wasn't labeled a SLAPP case, some argue that it shares similar characteristics: legal pressure aimed at critics or commentators, resulting in intimidation or chilling effects, even if the case itself doesn't proceed to full litigation. In fact, some digital rights groups are now using this case to advocate for stronger legal protections for content creators. They argue that creators deserve safeguards similar to journalists, especially when they're engaging in commentary based on public information. Several organizations have issued statements urging for reforms to allow courts more flexibility in awarding legal fees to those wrongly targeted by subpoenas or legal maneuvers by powerful entities. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's team has remained relatively silent following the ruling. Some insiders suggest they're viewing this as a quiet victory, preferring not to escalate the situation with public statements. Others believe that the silence is strategic, meant to let the ruling speak for itself while avoiding further headlines. But the silence isn't stopping public opinion from evolving. While Blake Lively continues to enjoy immense public support for her film career and philanthropic work, this legal battle is introducing new complexities to her public persona. Some fans are doubling down in her defense, insisting that she had every right to pursue answers and protect herself. Others, however, are growing uneasy, questioning whether the pursuit of truth became a form of collateral damage for people who simply had opinions online. YouTube itself has also become a battleground of reaction. Creators are uploading videos detailing their legal expenses, their court appearances, and the sleepless nights spent preparing responses to legal threats they never expected. Viewers are commenting by the thousands, many offering support, others warning creators to avoid hot topics entirely. Moving forward, that very advice is telling. It shows how a single legal move can shift the tone of an entire platform. In one particularly viral video, a creator showed a spreadsheet of legal expenses incurred over just 2 months, totaling more than $8,000. They spoke emotionally about having to cut back on uploads, turn down collaborations, and even dip into savings, just to stay afloat. And though the judge ruled they weren't required to hand over information, the damage in their view had already been done, yet some creators are choosing to use this moment as fuel. They're organizing panels, live streams, and legal awareness campaigns to ensure other creators know their rights. Some are even setting up crowdfunding pages to help creators cover costs from future cases like this one. It's a movement rooted in resilience but also in frustration that speaking freely online now comes with such high risks. As we enter this new chapter of digital discourse, the balance between celebrity privacy and public commentary is being rewritten. And this ruling, though legally sound under current statutes, will remain part of that evolving story. It's a reminder that legal victories aren't always about who was right, but about who could afford to keep going. And perhaps that's the most haunting part of all. The creators fought for their rights and won, but they still walked away feeling like they lost. The courtroom may have closed its files on this round of legal sparring, but the aftershocks are far from over. Blake Lively's latest win in the legal arena, specifically the judge's decision to deny financial reimbursement for content creators caught in the subpoena crossfire, has opened up deeper discussions about fairness, access to justice, and the power dynamics of modern media. What began as a limited legal conflict has now evolved into a broader symbol of the cultural divide between powerful public figures and the independent voices of the internet. This ruling doesn't exist in isolation. It touches on how society views commentary, celebrity criticism, and the systems we rely on to keep those forces in balance. For every creator who's walked away financially wounded, there are hundreds more watching from the sidelines, wondering what this means for them. If they ever find themselves under legal pressure, one undeniable reality has emerged: legal systems are not always designed with content creators or ordinary individuals in mind. While the law does provide remedies to protect against unfair subpoenas, it rarely accounts for the cost of invoking those protections. As the judge ruled in this case, Blake Lively was not obligated to pay the legal bills of the YouTubers and independent journalists involved. Even though those subpoenas were ultimately challenged successfully, the law allowed her to issue those subpoenas, and that in the eyes of the court was sufficient to avoid sanctions or cost penalties. But just because something is legally justified doesn't mean it's ethically unchallenged. The creators didn't lose because they were wrong. They lost financially because they couldn't prove the subpoenas were issued in bad faith. That's a high standard to meet and an expensive one to fight. And it raises a difficult question: should creators be expected to bear these costs alone? Especially when they're vindicated. Digital rights advocates don't think so. Since the ruling, several advocacy groups have begun circulating petitions and drafting proposals calling for reform. They want to make it easier for people to recover legal costs when they successfully defend against legal overreach, especially when those people are small creators or everyday users of online platforms. The movement is gaining momentum and could lead to legislative discussions about updating laws to reflect the realities of internet-age speech and media commentary. Some creators, however, aren't waiting for reform. They've turned their experiences into teachable moments for the wider community. Live streams, panels, and breakdown videos are flooding YouTube, detailing everything from how to respond to subpoenas to how to find affordable legal help. There's a new sense of solidarity and understanding that while this fight may have ended with a court ruling, the larger war for creator protections is still very much underway. Blake Lively, on the other hand, remains mostly quiet on the subject. Publicly, there's been no celebratory statement, no commentary from her legal team, and no new legal filings. Too many of the signals that her side considers the matter resolved. Others believe it reflects an effort to let the story fade rather than risk reigniting the narrative. After all, while the legal ruling was in her favor, the court of public opinion is more nuanced. For her most loyal fans, this ruling reinforces the belief that Blake is simply defending herself and using legal tools available to anyone in her position. For others, especially those in the creator and commentary community, it's a stark warning about how easily power can be used to exert pressure, even unintentionally. Some legal analysts believe this case could become a key example taught in law schools or referenced in future legislation. It reflects the modern tension between traditional defamation, privacy concerns, and the decentralized world of online commentary. It also touches on the chilling effect that legal action can have on free expression, even when that legal action doesn't move forward to full litigation. And that's perhaps the most sobering takeaway. This case never went to trial. No jury was called. No courtroom testimony was heard. The legal action began and ended in motions, paperwork, and rulings, but for the people involved, it was deeply real. It affected their finances, their emotions, their confidence, and their ability to speak without fear. This is what makes the story bigger than Blake Lively or any one creator. It's about the environment we're building. Are we creating a digital space where people can challenge power without being crushed by legal costs, or are we inching closer to a world where only the boldest or richest can afford to speak freely in the end? The court may have sided with Blake Lively, but this case is far from a clean-cut victory. It leaves behind questions that can't be answered with legal filings. What protections do small creators have in an age of celebrity litigation? Should courts have more flexibility in awarding costs to people who are dragged into legal fights they didn't start? And most importantly, how do we preserve the balance between reputation protection and public commentary in the social media era? As YouTube continues to grow as a platform for independent voices, cases like this one are bound to happen more often, but with each battle the community learns, it adapts. It becomes smarter, more aware, and better equipped to defend itself not just legally but collectively. Blake Lively may have won in the legal sense, but in the broader conversation about speech power and accountability, this ruling is just the beginning.